Welcome to our webinar, hosted by Stellium and SAP, your complete guide for organizations evaluating a migration from SAP MII to SAP Digital Manufacturing, SAP DM. A quick overview on Stellium. We are an SAP Gold partner based in the US with operations in Canada, India and UAE. We offer a broad range of services including S/4 digital supply chain and manufacturing supporting solutions like SAP EWM, TM, BN4L, DM among others. In this webinar we will be discussing some of the questions we have consistently been hearing from our manufacturing customers, but please feel free to add your questions in the comments section. We are here to discuss the changes in SAP manufacturing offering and what they mean to your organization. As most of you know, the standard maintenance for SAP MII will end by 2027. In the meantime, SAP Digital Manufacturing has matured rapidly and has seen heavy adoption in the market for both process and discrete manufacturers. We understand that most of you are here because you currently use or support ME or MII and are trying to help your organization figure out how to transition away from those solutions, when to do it and how to do it effectively.
So we want to start by saying that moving from ME, and especially from MII to DM, shouldn't be considered a migration. Don't want to look at it as a one-to-one replacement, but really want to think of it as a transformation for your business and your operations and the way you do things, which means thinking in terms of what you need to continue doing with your new system, as well as what you have the opportunity to do differently or in addition to what you're doing today. So during this hour, we'll talk about SAP's strategy around DM as it relates to ME and MII customers, as well as new customers, and some of its key highlights. We'll also discuss some of the doubts we know you may have, some of the challenges you can expect, how SAP is addressing those, and how you can be prepared to address them. And we'll also share a bit about how Stellium is helping our clients approach this transition to DM. So, Sam, to kick us off, can you start by sharing the intention and the back? So we want to start by saying that moving from ME, and especially from MII to DM, shouldn't be considered a migration. Don't want to look at it as a one-to-one replacement, but really want to think of it as a transformation for your business and your operations and the way you do things, which means thinking in terms of what you need to continue doing with your new system, as well as what you have the opportunity to do differently or in addition to what you're doing today. So during this hour, we'll talk about SAP's strategy around DM as it relates to ME and MII customers, as well as new customers, and some of its key highlights. We'll also discuss some of the doubts we know you may have, some of the challenges you can expect, how SAP is addressing those, and how you can be prepared to address them. And we'll also share a bit about how Stellium is helping our clients approach this transition to DM. So, Sam, to kick us off, can you start by sharing the intention and the background behind the Transformation Accelerator?
Yeah, sure. So when we talk about the Transformation Accelerator program that it was formerly referred to as Elevate, we're starting to progress and through the process of turning this into a full-blown program with a lot of different services and engagement methodologies behind it. So there's a lot of best practices, guidance, and we've also done some fit gap analysis along with a maturation of the digital manufacturing environment at the endpoint there to leverage some more of the standard industry technologies and platform capabilities in order to straighten this road out a little bit to keep it to make it a little bit more streamlined than it may have been in the past. So we put a significant emphasis on moving customers from manufacturing suite into the new digital manufacturing world, and understanding what's there, what's not there, what's new, that you can take advantage of from a process wise. Does it overlap maybe with something else that you also had in your environment or not? But we can work through that as a joint group. We do have contact leads. If you have very detailed questions about the program, certainly your account team would be the first point of entry. With that, we move into the ecosystem side of things. Right, we talk about where our partners are, how they've been engaged along the way, in understanding capabilities of DM with their long history and background the MII and the ME products, and are starting to build out their own prepackaged solutions. Right, there's I saw one around SPC just yesterday, delivered from a services partner, not just an SPC company, but a services partner that had built out some capabilities there. I see other ones around when you see this paradigm with the logic engine, this is the right way to go about handling it, or with the integration and the messaging tools, this is the way that we now handle the MII message monitor and the messaging services that were built into MII. This is how we handle it with the cloud integration. So there is a variation of tools and support methodologies and best practices that have been put together. Some have been built by SAP. Some of them are being enhanced and augmented by the ecosystem. And you do see this is a mix, right? It's a mix of what's core in digital manufacturing and as an application, and what's part of the business technology platform, and then what's just a broader technology, like Kima as an example. What's a broader technology that's not necessarily owned and managed by SAP, but an open ecosystem technology for building out UIs and building out that pro code last mile layer. How do you tailor a web UI and an interface to a specific person or a specific process to make sure that that's very native feeling for them, right? Those are the kinds of things that we're seeing here as being delivered, but also being built out as well.
Yeah, and so to add on to that, can you walk us through the overall product strategy for DM and how common standards and custom standards are all being accounted for?
Yeah, sure. When you get into the digital manufacturing environment, where we have this a lot of different scenarios that we're building out. Some of them are very generic, right? Generic execution of a production order or a process order or a planned order, right? Some are pretty, just pretty potatoes, if you will, not even the meat and potatoes, but just really basic stuff. And then we also have industry flavor that's been overlaid on top of it. So we're working with different industry teams and the IBUs within SAP in order to build out key industry, very specific things as well. And sometimes those will apply to you, and sometimes they won't, right? Sometimes they'll apply to you, but not as part of this current scope, right? Not as part of the current scope in the project. And that overlap, that capability, that covered scope, if you will, is a key important thing for understanding, what's the level of effort, what's the the maturity, for us, for the scenario where we need it the most. Where do we provide feedback? What services and engagement partners can we use in order to, fill in, the uncovered scope? Because just because it's uncovered doesn't mean it's ignored or lost, or you just can't do it that way anymore. Of course not. But what's the right approach to go into the uncovered scope? In addition to that, there's the darker green dot in there for around differentiating scope. And this differentiating scope is an important piece to this too, because it's not necessarily that you have to tell somebody else, something core, some core intellectual property about how you run operations. You can still keep that intellectual property, that knowledge, that in information close to you, and extend it yourself within the SAP, portfolio. So there's lots of options here around what's shared, what's not shared, what's kept, close as a, customer specific, or, even a plant and process specific intellectual property that you don't want to share and you want to, keep hidden from view. And certainly we have that capability as well. So know that there's a lot of different options here, and there's been, quite a bit of maturity around the delivered scope too. So the platform, the blueprint, if you will, if you look, kind of at the high level footprint that digital manufacturing is providing, we are sitting at the level 3 environment. It is still an enterprise system, and that the master data and even the initial definition of the transacting data is driven from the central ERP environment. The same work centers and routes and bill of materials, that same master data is what is pre-populated from ERP into the MES. So any work that you had previously done around MEINT, or even the OEINT around work center, route, rate, definitions on the ERP side, is still going to carry through and be useful in digital manufacturing. Now, we've built out more integration in the digital manufacturing piece than what we had in the past. So we do take additional things into account now around quality and around success factors and the integration with certifications and skills. We do have a more comprehensive integration with planning that is very bi-directional, so that we can orchestrate orders on the plant side, move them around, and update both planning and logistics about, hey, there's a change in production due to whatever unforeseen reason, something that you can't plan for. Maybe somebody had to leave work to pick up their sick kid from school. Now you're a labor shortage. Now it's not going to run quite the same in that area. Now, what skills, in what area, how do you balance the skills that you do have along with the demand that you have, and in order to hit your mark or hit the mark best you can. And that coordinates with logistics and planning. Now it also coordinates with the quality and operations maintenance team too. So some big things that we've done. Now, if you take a look at digital manufacturing and you kind of look at just the manufacturing piece, now at the top, we have our the core MES and the orchestration piece. We have the analytics as well with the insights. But once you get a layer deeper between level 2 and level 3, we get into this production process designer and production connector. This is what ultimately is providing the linkage between the state of the MES application itself and the states plurally, right? States plurally of the different control systems that exist in the manufacturing world. So when we look at what we had in the past with the logic engine in MII, it was very atomic, right? You call it, it would run through to finish, and that would be it. With production process designer, we kind of rethought that process a little bit, right? Do you really want to interact with the control system and have to kind of assume that what its state was all the time? So what we've done is we built a stateful BPMN model inside of this environment. It's graphical, right? It shows you the swim lanes. It shows you stateful. Wait for this event. Put these events in parallel. Wait for both of them to complete before moving on. And we have this stateful process now that we model, and that allows us to move in lockstep with these different control systems and the application state in order to make sure that we're operating properly and that we're aligned with the two systems. It is our bridge between IT and OT, and it is that key layer, if you will, for how we handle interaction and operation with the OT layer. This is fully based on the business technology platform from SAP, right? Which means that we have reach and the ability to leverage different services and tools that the technology platform brings to the table, right? When we say, integration, right, is now handled through, the SAP Cloud integration that's running in business technology platform, right? When we say we've embedded the analytics cloud piece for insights and analytics, right, that piece is just there and ready for us to use inside of our manufacturing data layer of digital manufacturing, right? And it sits on top so that you can self-service, provide your own analytics using the power of, analytics cloud. Around scale, right? We support Kima, Kubernetes, and Gartner. If you haven't, played around with those cloud technologies, those are industry standard technologies that allow us to get into the pro code layer, right? They get into the, with Kima, where we can build, custom UIs and custom plugins. Kubernetes gives us some, deploy and federated capabilities as well for the application, along with Gartner, of course, which is more of a housekeeping thing on our side, but certainly allows us to manage the flexibility and the elasticity of the different tenants a lot better. We leverage tools like SAP Build and Signavio, and you'll see a couple of examples in a little bit around the low code, no code, right? So how do we build applications that are low code or no code at all, on top of the data model and structure? And how do we understand how well the processes, not just in one application, but across multiple applications, how do we understand how well they're running and working together, and where the anomalies are, how often, how impactful? Also wanted to talk a little bit about where to find information on extensibility. I get this question more often than we probably should. We have a lot of really good documentation, around extensibility of the pod UIs. People call this out. Well, what about when I want to, have a very specific UI or control, layout, and your pod, doesn't quite live up to what we need? Well, sure, we have standard things that you can plug in, or you can go the pro code route, leverage the Kima skill set that somebody has out there in the world, right? It's not even an SAP specific skill set to do it, and then that will embed, directly into the business technology layer and is usable directly with digital manufacturing. We also use and leverage standard technologies from SAP, so it's not just always open, the open community. We've done a lot of work with Signavio and the Signavio team. Constantine did a lot of work to prove this out originally, and we built and exposed a lot of different services around, what's a cycle time, but not cycle time for inside of the process. Certainly we're tracking that inside of the plant, but what's the cycle time of when an order and a sales order is created in ERP all the way to when it's delivered to the customer's door? What are the processes involved? What are the systems? What's the flow of that information that's being triggered? And what does that look like? How often do we have 16-day deviations? How often do we see, 3 hours where it's idle between one work center and another in a route in the manufacturing floor, right? So we do have lots of granularity across the systems that we can pull to light and bring forward. Signavio is one of those tools that we're very proud of, and it's one that is very native with digital manufacturing as well.
All right, thank you for taking us through all that, Sam. We want to switch gears a little bit now and have you and Joe talk about some of the challenges around DM, some that are especially relevant to some MII customers. So Joe, you've spent most of your career working with and supporting MII, so you understand what many customers are thinking and considering. Can you share some of your thoughts?
Yeah. So like Christina said, I'm a longtime MII guy. For those of you that don't know me out there, I see a lot of names on that list that I do know. Hello to everybody. When I first started using DM, and it was DMC at the time, I truthfully, I didn't love it. And, Sam heard a lot of my complaints every time I would see him. I'm sure he was getting tired of that. But, a lot of it was because, I didn't know my way around the software. And, I didn't fully understand all of the new things and the new ways to do things that were kind of, worked into the DM product. And then, fast forward to today, after several talks with Sam and, a lot more hands-on experience, I'm definitely getting more comfortable with the solution. And I'm seeing a lot more of the benefits that it brings, like a lot of the stuff that Sam talked about today. And I was kind of getting into a different mindset when it's MII versus DM, and it's a new way of thinking. It's a transformation to digital manufacturing, and it's a new way to do things. So, and as I started to understand that, and thanks to Sam, it kind of hit me that it was kind of just like when we were back at Lighthammer. It was that same. We would go into these customers that were doing, paper-based manufacturing with silos of information, and we were introducing this new way to do things. And hey, we can get all your data, we can, bring it up, and we can get it up to your ERP system. And that was a little bit of a sell, and that was 20 plus years ago, where we were going in and we were introducing this new way of thinking, new way of doing things. So as the product developed, acquired by SAP, MII, a lot more technologies now are available, like machine learning, AI, analytics, digital twin, IoT, all of that incorporated into DM. We're going through that same cycle 20 years, that we did 20 years ago, where it's a new way of thinking and a new way of doing things. And like manufacturing, there's a lot more, things that you can do to make yourself better. And, so, again, 20 years later, we're going through that same cycle. We're going to customers and saying, hey, we got this new thing, that will, help you more, right? and do more things for you. And yeah, we know, we used to do it this way, but hey, how about we do it this way now? So, all that being said, there are definitely some challenges, and that's what, Sam and I, some of the things I have a couple of big ones that I still have a problem with. And the first one is the visualization thing. And in MII, it was so easy to get all your data, put it on a screen, and I could do it in 5 minutes. And in DM, I'm still finding it's not as straightforward. And I think part of it is that the DM product, you're going, it's MII, right? So DM kind of incorporated ME in the cloud, which I think that we agree that that's what it is. And now, the next step, which I have a couple of examples of, but I think that SAP is going to start incorporating some of the MII functionality into the DM product. First went with ME, now we're going to go with MI. But again, the first challenge that I see is the visualization piece. So, what are your thoughts on that? And I know you've told me a lot of stuff. I'd like you to share it with the crowd here, and
Yeah.
just to.
No, it's a lot of what you see within digital manufacturing today was built around the application itself. What is the process that we want to define for these different types of production scenarios? How do we support the standard flow and a standard mechanism, right? That's not going to constrain people into only an SAP monolithic way to do it, right? So we try to keep this modular. As that's matured, we have a lot of requirements that come in, right? We're well over 200 customers now with DM around the globe. So you can imagine not every customer has just one plant or one process, right? They have multiple plants, multiple processes, and we're incorporating that feedback into the standard capabilities of the pod and the UIs and what that layer looks like. So from a front end user consumption side, we are building lots of standard plugins, and the ecosystem has also stepped up and delivered very tailored ones to certain processes. Now, when we get into the automation data, which is where I think you're headed around what we would see with a line monitor, production line monitor is the next step, right? In order to have something to report, you have to have something that you did, right? So we start with something that you did, which is the operator pods and those lower level screens, and that automation piece, and then we get into the next level up. What are the end-on displays? What are the line monitor views of operations? What's that that machine data in addition to the operations context going to look like together? And that's where this next round of investment is centered around. You see the automation team as part of the February release in, was it 2.5 weeks, is releasing an MQTT feed from Production Connector and an MQ broker in a Kubernetes deploy container. So the MQ broker itself is going to facilitate a lot of data live to screens in the way that we visualize and consume live operations and controls data in the UI layer of digital manufacturing. It's going to change the paradigm, what you've seen in the past with this machine model, asset-centric indicator view, move into more of an operations model view. So we have lots of plans around how that will transform and shift. Still has a link to the asset side, but isn't the asset structure only.
Yeah, an easier way to set up the whole asset model is is something that I do believe we need. So I'm glad you touched on that too.
Yeah, you're not the only person to provide that feedback. So the team's hearing it. There's a big investment on the automation side. Yeah,
excellent. That is good to know.
Yep.
If you need any input, tell them to come to me.
No problem.
One of the other challenges is, and this is something that we always went to, is cloud versus on-premise, right? So in manufacturing, most manufacturing is used to being on-premise systems, right? So DM is a cloud-based. So tell me the benefits of the cloud. Some of the and we've dealt with it too. Like the customers are like, what happens if we lose connection to the cloud? We don't have our pods, we don't have, definitely a challenge and a huge concern. So what are the steps SAP has taken to kind of help ease that concern for our guys?
Sure, resiliency is always a big topic, right? So the cloud itself has an SLA of 99.7% uptime, right? So that's the cloud. Your ISP and your network is going to have its own SLA, right, and their own uptime, separate from that, right? So you do have to keep that in mind. What, how critical are operations and how critical is system availability? And we know in manufacturing, 3 nines is table stakes, right? It's kind of a minimum of what you need. So we know that we're not at 3 nines right now, right? There is efforts on our side to move to 3 nines around availability of cloud, so that our SLA on the SAP Trust Center, whether that's done through an extra SKU or that's done through just the standard deployment, is still up for discussion on how it's going to be. Just trying to understand what the impact on the overhead side. Not every application in our portfolio requires 3 nines. So do you push everybody's water line up, or just certain areas where you need it? So that's part of the discussion. The other part of the discussion is moving down the chain, right, to the network itself. Do you put dual redundant T1 lines? If it is really a network outage issue that you're seeing, is it something that you take up with the ISP and your ISP provider around resiliency, and you change and modify their SLA? Maybe the outage windows that we have are friendly for when you're not running production and when you're not running operations. We try to do that for the different regions. When we do the data center updates, quarterly updates, we do try and time them so that they're not middle of the day, middle of production, or 10 a.m. on a Monday morning, or on a Friday or something like that on people, right? We make sure that those aren't the outage windows for the cloud environment for the folks running it. Mm-hmm. So we've timed that on our side, but the ISP still can be another link in the chain that can cause the failure. And certainly you can talk to them about, like I said, dual redundant T1 lines, or even a 5G tower that sits on top of your plant, and then there is no network to cut, right? There's no line that cuts. It's just a completely wireless, leveraging some of the latest and greatest bandwidth capabilities that they're providing, even with 10G or whatever they're talking about now. In addition to that, there's one more step lower in the chain, and that's local to the plant. What runs local to the plant? So we have, as part of this last couple of releases behind the scenes, we've moved everything from native Cloud Foundry in BTP to native Kubernetes. So the full code base of DM has shifted over into a full Kubernetes code base. The reason we're doing that is to better accommodate deployment to an edge, right? So deployment of the application runtime, not the configuration, not the admin, right? But actually deployment of the runtime image of the MES itself from cloud to run at the plant. And that will, that deploy container for the actual application itself will then provide that resiliency that takes any kind of cloud or network outage, off the table as being an issue. Certainly there's synchronization things, there's inventory changes and updates on the warehouse side. There's stuff, that still plays a bigger role in what's going on. But we do feel like by November, we'll have a viable product for a full Kubernetes deploy of the MES application itself. I know we've been saying that for a lot longer than we've wanted to. We've gone through 2 re-architectures of that in the midterm, only because, well, we could do it, but it's not hitting the expectations of what we need, right? In the meantime, hardware has improved around, Kubernetes has improved around the way that it clusters with hardware, and also the application standard around Kubernetes maintenance and how they're deployed and their best practices has also improved. So we're able to take advantage of some of the newer capabilities that have come out of that.
Awesome. So that'll be like having an on-premise system, the DM runtime.
Yeah, minus the big overhead, minus the security issues that can occur, right? This is all centrally managed version. So think of it more like the mail app on your phone, where your mail is available on your phone, it's available on your computer, but the the app itself of MAL is just handled, right? It's just there. It just works, right? So that's the kind of approach that we're taking with it.
Awesome. We love when it just works.
No, don't we all?
Yeah. You know, and you know, while there are the challenges, you know, I did talk about, you know, how, you know, that SAP will be working some of the functionalities that we were used to in MII into the new product. And you know, I was going through the roadmap, and you know, some of the MII like features that I'm looking forward to is, you know, your guys are gonna, you know, have SPC in there, you know, fast data feeds into the manufacturing UI. I think that sounds a little MII like to me. OEE MDOs, which I, you know, I was looking for those, you know, a little while ago, and they weren't there, and so they'll be in there. And then later in the year, the ability to configure your own OEE logic, I think is a good one for all those non-OEE people that we know out there. Also, the one of the other things you guys are working is maintenance requests from DM to plant maintenance. You know, that's a good one. I've had a couple of people ask about that.
You can get around that one a little bit today.
Yeah, you definitely can.
In Process Designer, right? You can map your own service in. So you can work with a third party or even our own through the services layer, but there'll be a more native approach for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we had to, you know, that's what we had to do to get that information. But you know, natively would be, you know, that's always better, I think. Yeah. And then finally, and this is a future one. This isn't even in for 2024, but it was simplified access to shop floor data. You know, that serve up historical measurement information. So I don't know what you know about that, but you know, that sounds like MII.
That it is, and it gets into the discussion of, you know, where is time series data going to reside, you know, for historical reporting purposes. Do you keep it in a plant on hard drives for 10 years? I mean, I would say no, right? It's really not the best place for it, because the people
that would say yes
are going to. Yeah, I know that's okay, but I don't think it's the best place for it. I think those people can still get to it from a central environment, along with a much broader community of people that will also benefit from it. So while it's important for those people at the lowest level of operations to have, you know, access to that data, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a system that is, you know, local to the facility and keeping it in hard drives, physical storage, right? It's much better and much more resilient for the business, right? Disaster recovery and even cost of ownership of that. That's into a.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Cool.
So I think that a lot of good stuff coming. I think the DM strategy, the value, the challenges that we've talked about so far, it's relevant and helpful for anyone interested in looking at DM. When we talk about ME customers today, there's a fairly straightforward transition. DM aligns with almost everything ME does, and then adds layers and layers of capability on top of it, which you've highlighted, Sam. So when an ME plant implements DM, there shouldn't be a need for ME anymore, at least in the vast majority of cases. When it comes to MII customers, things can look a little bit different. So Joe, can you share our approach at Stellium to helping MII customers plan their transition to DM?
Yeah, so you know, looking at it and working through some of these you know, projects and stuff, you know, the one thing we don't recommend is just going out and ripping out your ME and MII and you know, replacing with DM and BTP all at the same time. You know, now if we had a customer that really wanted to do that, we would support it, but you know, that is definitely not what we recommend. We recommend a hybrid approach, utilizing digital manufacturing and and SAP MII, you know, in the same landscape, while you move the functionalities from MII off of that platform into the DM platform. You know, the DM has the ability to, you know, use some of your existing SAP transactions and you know, workflows and stuff like that that you've already built, you can utilize them in the service registry of DM, and have maybe pod plugins and stuff like that. So, we found that this is this will be the best way. And remember, it takes time. It's a phased approach. It is, still using your existing system and move, and slowly in phases moving the functionalities to your new DM platform. Like we're currently working with a customer doing some assessment stuff and everything, and they have 74 requirements that are currently being done in their MII system. They're heavily automated, and they have this running rate. And we went through and we identified 61 of them are standard in DM. Stuff that was all in, everybody knows it's all custom MII stuff. So it's standard in DM, which means there's only 13 of them that we're going to need to customize, and we're going to just do that with building extensions in BTP. So ultimately, it can do what MII does. It's just a different way to get there, right?
Yeah, and so for in that example, what we're working with this customer on is implementing DM for those 60 odd standard requirements. Get DM in place, call the MII transactions that exist today from DM, and then over time phase out as we build those BTP extensions. They can one by one replace the MII transactions, but it doesn't all have to happen at once.
Absolutely. So if you are interested in getting started, we here at Stellium, we have an assessment package that aligns with SAP's transformation acceleration program. So, with our assessment package, it's 3 steps. It's the scale, scope, and solution. So, initially we'd start you with a questionnaire, so we can understand at a high level, what you currently have in place, give us a good idea of, what MII is doing for you. And then, give us the ability to, kind of understand what effort it is to detail your scope for step 2. So in step 2, we have, a bunch of workshops that we set up just to understand your business processes, how exactly you're using MII, what are the challenges that you're having, what would you maybe hope that, MII could do, but isn't doing for you now, some new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things. And then finally, that takes us to, that information, we'll develop for you a roadmap, that includes project plans, timelines, full implementation proposal, and we'll get you started on your, transformation journey to DM. So, and feel free to contact me directly with any questions. Our contact information will be available at the end here. But, any questions about our package offering or anything like that, happy to talk to you about it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, it is time for questions and answers from the audience, and it looks like we have a number. So we'll get through as many as we can. Let's start with this question around inventory. So how is inventory handled real time and single source of truth?
Sure. So the inventory piece is, we do have standard integration and workflows with EWM out of the box. So you will see EWM basic and advanced, both as an integration option with digital manufacturing. There are APIs to work with third-party warehouses as well. In fact, we've proven this out multiple times at different customers who are not using EWM yet. They have it in their path, but it's not available to them. So they have a current warehouse system, and we need to work with that. That includes staging and restaging, right? As you know, resource orchestration, you can have an order that was planned to work, it's planned to be run here, and now due to whatever reason, we have to move it to run somewhere else, rather than take that product that was staged into floor stock and digital manufacturing and moving it back to the warehouse to move it back to the other area for production. We can take that floor stock and just do the transfer, and we can let the warehouse and inventory system know what's going on. There's a new application capability in digital manufacturing called Managed Staging 2.0. And that application is what's really the front end for the interface to AGVs, carriers, floor stock, staged components and product for multiple orders for the different areas. and also managing the for stock and inventory IDs.
Can you talk, there's a question around PI sheets.
There's a lot of them.
Can you address this one as well? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So PI sheets is part of our strategy by 2025, maybe Q1 2025, for us to get all the way there for the PI sheets. But we introduced guided procedures and electronic signature last year to help move into the regulated space. Now, electronic signature is not done. We have more iterations that you're going to see to mature that further around the dual sign-off piece coming this year. You'll see a path to EBR, so the electronic batch record is part of digital manufacturing in our roadmap, right? So that's an approved delivery thing that we'll be putting into digital manufacturing. Tying that with batch release hub is a very key aspect of that. In order to do EBR, of course, you have to have traceability. You have to have the PI sheets-esque piece, and that will be delivered as part of the standard capability within digital manufacturing in the pod. That's part of just what we're doing, just because that's our roadmap for process industries on the life sciences side.
Yeah. There's a number of questions around integration, and specifically integrating with other MES systems.
Sure.
We see that as well.
Yeah, and MII, I saw one in there about can you have the hybrid of MII in place with DM, and production process designer can call any service, right? So you register the service in what we call the managed services registry. So you register a service as trusted. You teach DM a little bit about what the structure, right, the ins and outs are going to look like for that service, and what the payload will look like, in addition to the request properties and the response properties. So those payloads back and forth are defined there, and we can then take advantage of calling into any one of these systems. Could be another MES, could be the MII logic engine. It doesn't matter at that point. So any one of those little blocks that you saw in production process designer could be either another process designer underneath it, or call to another system that had its own process behind it.
Yeah, and I mean the REST APIs that are available, importing and extracting data, all of that. Makes it pretty open to work with other systems.
And it gives us the ability to have prove out the MES over the top of an existing process without disrupting what's really running at the plant, right? So you can do headless MES and drive it that way as well, and you take advantage of the analytics, take advantage of the API data model and the processes that DM is providing. Your current MES may or may not have full coverage of the facility, so you can see DM in the areas where the current MES is not, and then still interacting in a headless way with the MES that is covering other areas. So we've seen that approach too.
Okay.
I see one here, Christina. Like it says, since MII is going out of maintenance, is it prudent to use MII connected with DM? And my answer for that would be, that's why you have to start now, right? It is in phases, and like Christina mentioned, officially it's 2027 is the end date for MII, which potentially could be extended by SAP. I don't know if Sam wants to comment on that, but maybe. But again, like I said, it is a journey, and that's why we are talking about this now, and this is why we want to get our customers to start thinking about that.
Now, there's no guarantee it'll be extended to 2030.
Yeah, no, I know.
Discussion is underway. MII is not the only product on NetWeaver, and it's really extending the NetWeaver Java support out to 2030 first as the dependency, and whether or not that happens is out of the manufacturing control for sure. We will just roll with however the decision coming down, right?
However it happens.
However it happens.
Out of your hands, Sam. Out of your hands.
But right now you stick with what's documented and what's published, and that's 12/31/2027. It's in the product availability matrix that way. If it changes, that'll be the first place officially it will change.
Okay.
Sorting through a few more of these. 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 Sorting th So one I see is if we're currently using SAP ERP, confirming production orders without an MES, and we introduce DM, what is the advantage to doing that over just a regular normal order confirmation through the ERP?
I mean, one is granularity and enforcement of the process, right? Skills and workforce management, right? You may be doing that in paper, and you may not have really seen that as a gap before, but now all of a sudden there's new capability where it kind of shines a light on the fact that, you know, having a whiteboard with paper and, you know, little pie charts for skills, you know, for next to every employee's name, that isn't the best way to manage, you know, the workforce, moving people around, moving work around from one area to another. Will mess with the ERP backend, right? If the order was, you know, shown as started, not just released to the MES, but shown as started already, how do you move it in flight to somewhere else? Maybe that area broke down and you have to move that work elsewhere. How do you do that confirmation that way? A lot of times it's backflushed because you don't have all those granular events that are often system driven from DM, right? You're not going to do that as a manual entry into the ERP environment. So traceability, around efficiency in the process for all the different confirmations and partial confirmations will probably be lost. So there's a multitude of reasons why the real time and the bigger picture is there. Can you get away with it? Sure, no problem, absolutely. But is it at a cost? Yeah, absolutely.
There's another. So talking again about there's a question about, is there a migration tool available migrating from ME and or MII?
So that's a good one. And a lot of the, and I hinted at it already, a lot of the work, you know, if you set it up this way, right, is that the MEI and T piece was using the master and transacting data out of ERP already. So a lot of the upfront work to get ME running in, you know, in place meant that you were enhancing and cleansing and setting up master and transacting data on the ERP side. That doesn't go away. That same integration and more gets used by DM. So part of the implementation timeline of ME on the ERP end is exactly the same that you would see with DM, and as a result carries through no problem, right? Now there's going to be the last mile, right? The operator experience and those views. And again, we have to talk about, you know, what's new in DM and what exists and what, you know, processes are relevant and what doesn't exist and what is going to exist in the near term versus what you want to build on your own because it's core intellectual property that you want to keep close to the chest. So it gets back to the Venn diagram where we go through, you know, what's there, what can you use, you know, what do you want to share, what do you not want to share.
That is about all the time that we have to answer questions today. If we didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We'll put up our contact information. We do want to help make sure that we can get them answered.